Hello and welcome. My name is Heather Frederick, and I am here today to introduce Dr. David Bailey. I had the honor of chairing Dr. Bailey's applied doctoral project that you probably won't be surprised to hear was on mindfulness in high-stress occupations. And Dr. Bailey is passionate about helping others understand who they are, recognize their life purpose, and become better individuals through the use of mindfulness practices. His presentation today is titled Using Mindfulness for Occupational Health. And Dr. Bailey, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate everybody joining in this afternoon. As stated, this was the source of my doctoral study, and I hope that I can bring forth some information that can be used to help others be more well in the workplace. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so when you look at this graphic, many people may feel like this individual. We spend so much time day in and day out in hurry up mode, so much so that often we don't take the time to really realize the things that we're going through, things that we're feeling, whatever. The guy in the image here, he's eating, he's reading bad news, he's watching the news, which is often very bad news. His concerns are time, money, work. This is the typical person who works day in and day out, 40 plus hours most time, and then have family and everything on top of it. We all probably can understand what this individual is dealing with. The bad thing is we take this and we take it with us to the workplace. And so that culminated with all the things that we deal with in the work just continues to compound stress. So my focus was trying to find a way to eliminate some of this clutter, eliminate some of this negativity, some of this excess stress that we deal with, so that we can be better employees, better co-workers, and then we can carry that home and be better family members and what have you. So, I just kind of touched on that. So we see lots of issues present. It's really a commonality anymore with the way that we deal with workplace issues. And this was just about how we like this guy. We resemble this in maybe more than one way. So let's take a look at this. So are we mindful, meaning that our mind is cluttered with a multitude of things, or are we mindful, where we are aware of what we're dealing with? Are we aware of what we're feeling and sensing and paying attention to it in a way that we're not necessarily judging, but we are understanding what's going on with us and then using that information to be better in the workplace, be better at home. Okay, so when we are feeling cluttered by the level of our day-to-day stimulation, we can use mindfulness to help us gain clarity, gain resiliency, to help us make decisions. When we are mindful, like on the left-hand side, we aren't able to make great decisions. We aren't dealing with clarity because all of those things in the left-hand bubble are having an impact on our thoughts and our feelings, our emotions. And when we are dealing with a high level of emotion, it's really difficult for us to make great decisions. It's hard for us to be resilient to the stressors that we're going to encounter even from one place to the next. And there's a multitude of those things that we have to deal with. So for those that may or may not be familiar with mindfulness, it's important for us to have an idea as to what exactly mindfulness is. And that's just being aware of our present moment. Taking a moment to assess where we are, what we're doing, what we're experiencing, and without judgment, recognizing that we're dealing with it so that we're not allowing it to become compounded and having more emotional impact, because one stressor enhances the next stressor, which enhances the next stressor. Next thing you know, we're in overload and meltdown. So it's really important for us to be mindful about what we're dealing with in the present moment. Kabat-Zinn is the person who brought mindfulness to us. He brought from Southeast Asia. He brought it, and he's the individual that established in Massachusetts the Center for Mindfulness Studies at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. Excuse me. And he identified three pieces. It has to be on purpose, meaning that there's intent. It has to be present, meaning that we're focused on it right now. And that big piece at the bottom, without judgment. We can recognize that things are happening, but without judgment, it doesn't have any power. It doesn't have, once we give it emotionality, once we give it judgment, then that stressor has an effect on us. Many of us like to avoid stress. We want to just avoid it, push it away, but we need to approach it in a mindful way so that we're dealing with it without the emotional impact. Once we deal with it in a mindful, safe way, then it loses the power over us. It loses that ability to affect our other decision-making processes, how we interact with others, and what have you. So, mindfulness is big business. Many organizations have developed programs centered around mindfulness to help their employees become more well. Google, at the very top, they're known for their nap pods, for their mindfulness areas where you could go and do a quick 3, 5, 10-minute mindfulness session where you're just relaxing, you're breathing, you're focusing on what we're working with, what emotions we're dealing with, so that we can get that under control. And by doing that, they have increased their productivity. They've increased their ability to work in teams because they are in a calm zone. They are not being affected by many stressors. The workplace as a whole is very safe, it's very healthy, and that's why Google is one of the most sought after organizations. The American Red Cross uses mindfulness. It was really interesting to find that the United States Marine Corps actually has a mindfulness program where they train soldiers in mindfulness techniques so that when they go to a theater of war or they are deployed into a combat zone, they're able to manage the stressors of being there so that they are more present. They can think clear, have better connectivity with each other, and they don't and it really does help to reduce the stressors of that. Many organizations have started to build mindfulness training within their human resource programs as professional development, as wellness programs, because organizations recognize that mindfulness does help, it does work, and it helps us be better employees, better coworkers, better leaders. The sports organizations also use mindfulness. I found many pro sports teams have individuals within the organization that use mindfulness for performance abilities, for dealing with game stressors and those sorts of things. And mindfulness is only going to get bigger as research continues, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do mindfulness as my doctoral study. Our stress response is biological. This is focused on the biological perspective of psychology. When we are dealing with stress, we have a number of things that will come into play. As you can see, when we're dealing with stress, we want to fight it. We want to bury our head in the sand, per se. If we ignore it, it's going to go away. Wrong. Oftentimes when we're under stress, we want to blame ourselves for things. Well, blaming ourselves is not going to make it better. It leads to worrying. When we worry, we tend to increase that stress, and then increases the worry. It's a nonstop cycle that can only bring about poor work habits, poor work health. When we're under stress, we tend to blame others. It could lead to substances. Our focus is keep busy. If we keep busy, then our stress will go away. Wrong. When we keep busy, we don't have the ability to recognize what is stressing us out, which can then lead to further issues. As you can see in the little graphic up here, the areas of the brain that are affected by stress, prefrontal cortex, that's where our emotion response comes in. This has a huge effect on our behavior. The amygdala and hippocampus, these are really important to our stress response. When we're dealing with stress, these areas light up when the person is in a functional MRI. We can tell how the brain lights up when we're dealing with stress. Unfortunately, stress has a negative effect on our body as well. So dealing with stress response is really important. A great image for reactivity is the pinball machine. When we are dealing with stress, we just continue to bounce that stressor around. You have the plungers, the ball is the stressor. These are the issues that we deal with. It just keeps bouncing around. If you maintain that ball in play, it's going to rack up points, but those points are those negative responses, those exhaustion effects that come about from overreactivity, our hypersensitivity to even small things. Maybe that comment wasn't intended to be the way we perceived it, but because we're dealing with stress and we're dealing with these now, we have over-emotionalized, and it could lead to a poor interaction. It could cause us to have a conflict with our coworkers. Maybe it's going to affect our productivity if we're dealing with stress. We become over-focused on the little things, and now we've lost productivity time because we've stayed too long on things that maybe we didn't need to have. Reactivity has an effect on our cognition, the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. When we are being reactive, it changes the way we think. Putting mindfulness into play, that helps to reduce reactivity. It helps us to improve our thought process. And when we think clearly, we respond better. We have control over our feelings. The sensations that we're dealing with don't have the emotional power because we are able to manage how we're thinking about that, and then it changes the behavior in response. It keeps us from having this avoidance, aversion. When we have less reactivity, our behavior changes. We no longer avoid it. We take it head on. We deal with whatever that stressor is, and then that makes us better in the workplace. Why should we use this in the workplace? Well, the benefits are that our attention span increases. We become clearer with our thoughts. In some cases, we might even have increased creativity because now we're not dealing with those negative stressors. That opens up our ability to think clearer. And so now maybe we can come up with better ideas. We can be an active part of decision making or processes or what have you. On the psychological side, the reduced anxiety, this is a big one. The reduced emotional reactivity. When we decrease those two items, we become better, we become more compassionate to each other because we're now able to see what's going on. And then of course we can regulate our behavior better because we're not dealing with reacting to everything on a high emotional scale. Our thought processes are clean and clear. Both sides of that coin ultimately make us a better employee, a better supervisor, a better coworker, and then it translates into home as well. It's really easy to implement mindfulness at work. It starts with building practices around our daily routine. Maybe you start the day off with a centering exercise where you're breathing and thinking about what you're feeling, how you're feeling today. What are the things going on with our body? It's a basic body scan. If you don't think you can start a practice on your own, guess what? There are many apps out there for our tablets and phones and what have you that can have a big effect on whether we can get started. There's journals out there that can help to get the process started. But the integration of technology has really made mindfulness easy to access. I use Headspace. I have Calm, and there's another application, Breathe. Those three apps integrate with the smartwatches, smartphones, free and premium activities. So if you don't want to pay for an app, well, that's fine. You can use some of these free things and still take advantage of the breathing exercises, the guided meditations, things to help bring your mind to a point where you can think clearer. One easy to use breathing space activity that you can use is what's called the 4-7-8, or the recharging breath. 4-7-8 basically stands for, you're going to inhale through your nose for a count of 4. That's going to increase the lung capacity. That's going to allow you to expand your diaphragm. You're getting good oxygen in. By maintaining that for a 7 count, you're allowing that oxygen to come into your bloodstream. You're going to allow the cloudiness in your brain to subside. And then you're going to exhale out all that stress through your mouth for a count of 8. A 3 to 4 count exercise, 3 to 4 cycles of that takes about 3 minutes, and it's a really great activity that you can do at the workplace if you're just feeling overly worked, or you're finding that your body is responding to stress. That's a really great way to recharge, recenter, and maybe get some mental clarity. Create a quiet area for yourself, or if you're a supervisor, for your staff. One of the suggestions I made in my doctoral work is that in the educational workspace, that there be a quiet mindfulness type zone, an area that's maybe not being used, where teachers could go and recenter themselves, because they deal with an excessive amount of stress day in and day out. But you yourself can create that quiet area for yourself. At home, it's really easy to do, but in the workplace, it may be a little more challenging, but with some cooperation from your organization, they can help their employees to be more mindful. Beginning your practice is as simple as starting to learn to breathe. And start small, build large. You can't learn it all. You can't establish a great practice overnight. You got to start with the building blocks, and the first piece is the breathing. Once you've got breathing in place, you can then start to implement small amounts of meditation. But by breathing with that 4-7-8 technique is a really great way to get yourself going. This is I've been, this is a great start to building a program. Being mindfully present throughout the presentation, I do appreciate that. You have had an opportunity to get just a snippet of what I found in my doctoral study. I've been working with this topic for about 3 years. I have created my own personal practice. I am slowly getting to where I can really feel the effects of the breathing and of being mindfully present, particularly in the classroom. As an instructor, I'm more aware of my own anxieties, and I can also use that to help my students become mindfully aware of what they're dealing with, and academically performing. I've seen an improvement. But I do appreciate you listening to my presentation. Hopefully I have gotten the ball rolling and have kind of intrigued you into finding out more. I do encourage folks, if they wish to reach out, if they're more than welcome to, and hopefully maybe, we can get some folks to start their own practice to become mindfully aware at the workplace. That's my presentation. So if there are questions, Dr. Frederick, I'll be more than happy to attend to them.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. Everyone who's online should see a chat box. Feel free to type in any questions that you have for Dr. Bailey. And for those of you who came to the presentation yesterday, Felicia Price's, you're seeing this theme of how important it is to breathe. Obviously, we're all doing it right now if you're here, but Dr. Bailey gave you a specific technique, and maybe you were trying it during his presentation, and you heard some yesterday, and you're going to hear some more tomorrow. And we've got a question there about how can we retain this information at a later time. So Tamara, this presentation is being recorded, so there are going to be links. But also, Dr. Bailey, you mentioned that people could reach out to you. If you want to give me an email, I can type it in the chat box for them.
They can use my school address, david.bailey@my.rockies.edu.
Okay.
As an alumni, I still have access to that email. Yes, ma'am, that is correct. I'll be more than happy to accept emails and questions that maybe are a little more direct to their thing. But it's my goal for this is to introduce and spark some interest in trying to find out a little bit further.
Wonderful. And we have some comments there. People are really appreciating the presentation and the techniques, and they're going to use this daily. So again, we're just getting comments thanking you, Dr. Bailey, for sharing your expertise, and the information really presents a case for us all pressing that pause button, right? Whether we're the employee, the supervisor, we're the teacher in the classroom, and recentering ourselves so that we can make those better decisions and take all that fullness in our minds and become mindful. So again, thank you, Dr. Bailey, for your presentation.
You're very welcome. I just want to add a little bit to that comment. I actually, I'm located in Virginia. I'm actually working with a teacher who's building a presentation for a state teaching conference, integrating some of my doctoral research into that on how to be resilient and keep teachers from leaving the workplace within that 3 to 5 year window, particularly brand new teachers, because of the stressors that are presented, and they don't necessarily have the toolbox to do that. So I'm already starting to bring my research forward, and it's starting to really get some attention, and I am very thankful for that.
And I think Wellness Week is spreading the great news that this doesn't have to be complicated. And I know, Dr. Bailey, that was one of the main things that was a big concern when you were doing your project, was that these teachers don't have a lot of extra time. So what can we do that's simple, that can be squeezed in between classes or during a lunch break, but also have significant impact? So again, it's great to not only learn the technique, but have the research to back us up to know that, yeah, this actually does change things emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Absolutely.
So thank you, everyone, for participating in Wellness Week, being with us here live. And again, Dr. Bailey, thank you for sharing your expertise. And we hope to see you at the other presentations that are forthcoming. Bye-bye, everyone.
You're very welcome. Thank you all for attending.